Hi everyone. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We wish you an enjoyable story. I was standing in front of my own apartment door, unable to believe what was happening. The key went into the lock, turned, but the door wouldn't open. At all. Like there was a different lock. I pulled the key out, stared at it. The same one I'd always had, with the little red heart keychain my grandma Nina had given me back in high school. I tried again. Still wrong. The metal scraped. The key got stuck. I yanked it out, almost breaking it. In my arms was a small bundle. My daughter, Laura, 3 days old. She started whimpering softly, sniffling through her tiny nose. I held her closer, feeling my stomach twist with confusion and fear. The C-section stitches pulled painfully. The doctors had warned me the first few weeks would hurt, that I shouldn't lift anything heavy or strain myself. Yet here I was, dragging a huge hospital bag. Baby in one arm, shopping bags in the other. The cab driver, jerk that he was, only drove me to the entrance and didn't help. Said he was in a hurry, took his $40, and drove off. I looked back at the door again. That's when I saw it. A sheet of paper taped right at my eye level. Plain white, letter-sized. The letters were big, black, written with a marker, crooked and rushed, like someone had scrawled it in anger or panic. I squinted. My eyesight had gotten worse after giving birth, everything blurred, especially at night. I read it once. Then again, slowly, syllable by syllable, like in first grade. Forget about this apartment. It's been sold. I stared at those words, but they just wouldn't make sense. Not at all. It was like they were written in another language. Forget? Sold? My apartment? The place where I was born, where I grew up, where I'd lived for 28 years. My grandma Nina's apartment, the one she got back in '63, when this building had just been built. The place she and I officially bought in '92 after standing in endless lines at the office, collecting documents. My heart started pounding weirdly fast, painful. I grabbed the stair railing with my free hand. The world spun. Maybe my blood pressure had shot up again. It had been unstable in the hospital. They said it was normal after a C-section, but that I should keep an eye on it. Laura started crying louder. I checked the time on my phone. 8 p.m. Feeding time. My shirt was already damp underneath. Milk was leaking, even though I'd used those special nursing pads in the hospital. I had to get inside, change out of the wet clothes, change the baby, feed her properly, not standing here in the hallway. All I had with me was one spare blanket and 3 diapers. Everything else was inside, the nursery I'd finished just a week ago for Laura. 25 diapers in a big pack, 10 new blankets, 3 sets of baby clothes, a tiny bathtub, a thermometer. All of it. Behind that door. Behind a door with a new lock. I shoved my hand into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. My fingers were shaking so badly I barely hit the contact. Greg. My husband. Long dial tone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click. Then the robotic voice, flat and cold. The number you're calling is unavailable or out of service. I hung up. Called again. Same thing. Again. And again. My hands trembled. My vision swam. Where was he? Why wasn't he answering? He'd promised he'd pick us up from the hospital that morning. I waited until noon, then called. He said he'd been called into work urgently, some nonsense about coming later. I waited until 3. Called again. No answer. Sent a message. Greg, when are you coming? They're discharging us. The nurses say I have to clear the room. He replied an hour later. Can't make it today. Can you get home on your own? Sorry. I'll explain tomorrow. Get home on my own. With a 3-day-old baby, fresh stitches, and a giant bag. Sure. Why not? Like it's nothing. I ordered a cab through the app, packed my things, changed Laura, wrapped her in her blanket. The nurses looked at me with pity. One of them, Tamara, even asked, Sweetheart, where's your husband? It's not right, sending a new mom home alone. I smiled and lied that he had an important meeting and would come later. She shook her head but said nothing more. Shoo, it's okay, honey, I whispered, rocking Laura. Daddy will answer soon, and we'll fix everything. He'll explain what's going on. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe he'd planned some surprise with his friends. Maybe he was remodeling. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a joke. That note, that lock, that unreachable phone, it wasn't random. Something had happened. Something very bad. I looked at the door to the left, apartment 122. That's where Aunt Helen lived. She was around 70, maybe older. She'd known me since I was a baby and had been close friends with my grandmother for 40 years. When Grandma died 6 years ago, Aunt Helen had cried harder than anyone at the funeral. Afterward, she often stopped by with homemade pies, asked how I was doing, if I needed help. A kind soul. She would know what was going on. She always knew. She stayed home all day, watching from her window, noticing everything. I walked to her door and rang the bell. The TV was blaring inside, loud, filling the whole apartment. Voices, laughter, music. Some kind of talk show. I waited. Rang again, longer. The TV kept blasting, but the door didn't open. I leaned toward the peephole and knocked with my knuckles. Helen. It's me, Marina. Please, open up. Silence. Just the TV. I pressed my ear to the door. Someone was inside. I could hear quiet, careful footsteps. Someone approached from the other side. The peephole darkened. Someone was looking at me. I waved. Aunt Helen. It's Marina. Something's wrong. I can't get into my apartment. Please, open the door. The peephole lightened again. The footsteps moved away. The TV kept blaring. I stood there, my forehead against her door, feeling the cold seep inside me. She saw me. She heard me. But she didn't open. Why? Why wouldn't Aunt Helen, the woman who'd known me all my life, who used to bring me candy, who'd cried at Grandma's funeral, why wouldn't she open the door? Laura was screaming now, full force. I unzipped my jacket, pulled out my breast right there in the stairwell, and put her to my nipple. She quieted down, sucking greedily, gasping. I stood under the dim yellow light, feeding my 3-day-old daughter, completely lost. I had to try the other neighbors. On the right lived a young couple, Julia and Stephen, about 30. We'd greeted each other in the elevator, chatted sometimes. Julia once asked when I was due and said they were planning to have a baby too. I knocked on their door. No one answered for a while. Then footsteps. The door cracked open, still chained. Yes? Julia peeked through the gap. When she saw me, her face froze in fear. Julia, hi. Sorry to bother you. I have a problem. I can't get into my apartment. Looks like someone changed the lock. Do you know anything about it? No. She shook her head quickly. I don't know anything. We just got back from vacation yesterday. Have you seen Greg? My husband? No. Haven't seen him. Sorry, Marina, I've got dinner on the stove. I have to go. She slammed the door shut fast, sharp. I flinched. I went down to the 4th floor. Right below me lived Oscar and Vera. They'd been friends with my grandmother forever, stood in the same lines for food during the recession, did community cleanups together, went to their cabins on weekends. After Grandma passed, Oscar sometimes stopped by to ask how I was doing, if I needed help around the house. He'd even fixed my kitchen faucet once. A good man. I rang their doorbell. Footsteps right away. The door opened, still on the chain. I saw Oscar's face in the gap. He looked at me, and I saw something strange in his eyes. Not surprise. Not joy. Fear? Or guilt. Marina? He swallowed hard. You better go, dear. Don't stay here. Uncle Oscar, I don't understand what's going on. I stepped closer. My key doesn't fit my door. The lock's been changed. And there's a note saying something about buyers. Do you know anything? I don't know anything. He spoke fast, avoiding my eyes. We didn't see anything, don't know anything. Nothing at all. Just go, Marina. Please, go. But Uncle, Vera. He called into the apartment. Vera, come here. I heard her footsteps. She came to the door, saw me, and gasped. Oh God, Marina, what are you doing here? Aunt Vera, please help me. I can't get into my apartment. We can't help you, sweetheart. She looked at her husband, then back at me. We're old. We don't need trouble. I'm sorry. And then she added softly, I'm sorry. The door slammed shut. I heard the click of the lock turning, then the chain sliding into place. I stood there on the 4th floor, in the hallway of the building where I'd spent my whole life, realizing that no one was going to help me. All the neighbors I'd known since childhood, the ones who'd known me, known my grandmother, had turned their backs. Everyone was afraid. But of what? Of whom? Laura pulled away from my breast and started grunting. Then I smelled it. She'd pooped. I had to change her diaper right away, but I had only one left. One. And after that, where would I get more? Where would we sleep tonight? I went down to the 1st floor. Near the entrance, in a small booth, sat the concierge, Linda. I'd known her for about 10 years. A plump woman in her 50s, always wearing slippers and a faded bathrobe, she loved gossiping with the tenants. My grandma never liked her, said Linda had a loose tongue, always snooping into people's business and spreading rumors around the building. The door to her booth was half open. Linda sat at her little desk, flipping through a magazine. The TV was on, a loud commercial with jingles and shouting. I knocked on the door and stepped in. Linda, hello. She looked up, saw me, and her face twitched. I saw the same thing in her eyes that I'd seen in Oscar's, fear, mixed with something else, pity, maybe. Oh, Marina. She set the magazine aside. Well, hi. Please, help me. I can't get into my apartment. The lock's been changed. Do you know what happened? Linda turned toward the window and was silent for a long time. Then she sighed. I don't know anything. Some people came this morning. 3 or 4 of them. They had keys. Went up to your place on the 5th floor, then left and drove off. Then they came back a couple of hours later with carts. Took some stuff out of boxes, bags. Called for a cab twice. And Greg, my husband, was he there? He was. Last night. Came with some woman. You know, that one who'd been to see you a couple of times before. His mother, I think. His mother. Allison. I'd seen her only 4 times in the 3 months Greg and I had been married. The first time was at our wedding in November. She came alone, without her husband. Greg said his father had died long ago. Allison was a tall, broad woman in her 60s, with short, dyed red hair. Dressed expensively, a mink coat, leather-heeled boots, big gold earrings. At the wedding, she congratulated us, handed Greg an envelope with $1,000, and said, "Well, you finally did it. Good for you." To me, she said only, "Take care of him." That was it. The next time she came to our home was in December. Showed up unannounced, looked around the apartment, said, "Not bad, but the place could use a renovation." She sat in the kitchen, had tea, talked to Greg about some business, then left. The second time was in January, when I was already pregnant. She brought some kind of herbal tonic, told me to drink it for my health. I didn't. I don't trust those homemade remedies. The third time was in March, a month before I gave birth. She brought a bag of baby clothes, onesies, shirts, little hats. All worn, faded, old. I said thank you, put them in the closet, but I wasn't planning to dress Laura in them. Do you know where they went? Greg and his mother? How should I know? Linda shrugged. I sit here watching the door. You think I go sticking my nose in other people's business? I've got enough of my own. But you saw them taking my things out? You saw them changing the lock? And you didn't say anything? Didn't call me? What was I supposed to say? She turned toward me, and her tone grew sharp. Your husband came with keys. Said he was doing some remodeling, moving stuff out for a bit. Was I supposed to call the cops on him? That's a family matter, not mine. I looked at her and knew she knew something bad had happened. But she stayed quiet, afraid, or just didn't want to get involved. Linda, I have a 3-day-old baby. I pointed at Laura. I have nowhere to go. Please, help me. I can't help you. She turned away again. Go to your relatives, or the police, or wherever. I'm not getting involved. I walked out of her booth and sat on a bench by the entrance. Pulled out my phone. Called Greg again. Still unreachable. I texted him. Greg, what's going on? Where are you? I can't get into our home. Call me right now. The message went through but stayed unread. I dialed my mom's number in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Long rings. No answer. Mom's been in bad shape since her stroke 2 years ago, can barely walk, barely hear. She lives alone in her 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. I visit once a month, bring groceries, medicine, clean up. She often doesn't hear the phone. It's an old model with a quiet ringtone, and she might be in another room or asleep. When the voicemail beeped, I left a trembling message. Mom, it's me. Please call me back when you hear this. It's really urgent. Please. Then I called Kate, my college friend. She'd moved to New York 2 years ago, got married, had a baby boy. We didn't talk much anymore, but she'd always said, Marina, if you ever need anything, call me. I'll always help. No answer. Subscriber unavailable. Maybe she's abroad? Or just turned her phone off. I tried another friend, Sarah. She lived in Brooklyn, on the other side of the city. More than an hour away. We went to college together but hadn't really seen each other since. She had her own life, job, 2 kids. I called. Long rings. Then Sarah picked up and hung up right away. I texted her. Sarah, it's Marina. I'm in trouble, serious trouble. Can I come to you, please? The message went through. 2 check marks. Delivered. But not read. I sat there on the bench, staring at my phone, feeling a cold wave of terror tighten inside me. I had no close friends in Philadelphia. No relatives I could go to right now, at 8 in the evening, with a 3-day-old baby. Grandma was gone. Mom was far away and sick. My friends were either unreachable or didn't want to be found. Laura started crying again. I looked down at her. Her tiny face was red and scrunched. I had to change her diaper, feed her, put her to sleep. But where? On a bench in the lobby? I stood up, grabbed my bag, so heavy my arms immediately ached, put on the baby sling and tucked Laura inside. Then stepped outside. It was late April. Dusk. The sky was gray and low. A cold, nasty wind blew from the river, cutting through clothes in seconds. I zipped up my jacket, pulled the hood over Laura, and started walking. Just walking, nowhere in particular. Past the grocery store where I used to buy bread and milk every day. Past the pharmacy where I'd gotten my prenatal vitamins. Past the bus stop where I'd waited for the morning bus to work before maternity leave. Everything around me was so familiar and so strange at the same time. Like I'd fallen into a parallel world where everything looked the same but wasn't real anymore. My phone said 8:40 p.m. It was fully dark now. Street lights glowed. Fewer people on the sidewalks. Across the street, the bright sign of the Market Street Galleria Mall shone invitingly. I crossed and went inside. Warm, bright, music playing, some pop song. The smell of coffee and baked goods. People walked with shopping bags, smiling, talking. Ordinary life, untouched by problems like mine. I took the escalator to the 3rd floor. There was a children's playroom there. I remembered it from a couple months ago when I'd been buying baby stuff for Laura. A big, bright room with soft couches and beanbags. Colorful rugs on the floor, cartoon animals painted on the walls. It was open until 10 p.m. That's what the sign by the door said. I walked in. Hardly anyone there. Just one mom in the corner playing with her 3-year-old boy and the young receptionist at the entrance, maybe 20, with a long ponytail and a bright pink t-shirt that said happy. "Ma'am, you here with your baby?" she asked, glancing at me, then at the sling holding Laura. "Yes. Can we sit here for a bit? This area is for kids over 1 year old, and yours is really tiny." "I know. It's just that." I hesitated. "We just need to sit for a bit. I need to feed my baby and change her. My husband and we had a fight. I don't have anywhere to go right now. Please." The girl looked at me, at my face, probably gray from exhaustion, at my trembling hands, at Laura sleeping in the sling. Then she nodded. "All right, you can stay. Just keep quiet. We close at 10. "Thank you." I went to the far corner and sat down on a soft couch. Took the last diaper cloth from my bag and spread it out. Gently pulled Laura from the sling and laid her down. Unbuttoned her onesie. The diaper was full, heavy. I took it off, wiped her clean with baby wipes. Thank God I still had some in the bag, then put on the last clean diaper. The last one. Tomorrow I'd have to buy more. A pack costs $35. I had $300 in my pocket. That was everything I had. Nothing else. I nursed Laura. She latched on greedily, sucked for a long time, then fell asleep. I wrapped her in her blanket and laid her next to me on the couch. I sat there, hugging myself, staring at the wall. What now? What was I supposed to do? My head was foggy. I tried to think, to make a plan, but the thoughts slipped away. Only one question kept circling in my mind. Why? Why did Greg do this? What did I ever do to him? Why me? I remembered the day we met. It was late July, half a year ago. I was walking home from work and stopped by a cafe for coffee. Greg was sitting at the next table, reading on his tablet. Tall, good-looking, wearing a crisp shirt. He looked up, smiled, and asked if I minded him joining me. I didn't. We talked for 2 hours straight. He told me about his job, manager at a construction company, decent pay, career growth. His hobbies, cycling, crime novels. He asked about me. I worked as an accountant at a small firm, lived alone in my grandmother's apartment, dreamed of a family, of children. It felt easy, natural. He walked me home, asked for my number. Then came the dates. Every day, every night. Flowers, gifts, dinners out. Greg said he'd been looking for me his whole life, that I was the one. After a month he suggested we move in together. I said it was too soon. He insisted. Why waste time if we already know we're meant to be? I gave in. He moved in with me. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Greg was thrilled. Said it was fate, that we should get married. I hesitated. We'd only known each other 6 weeks, but he was so happy, so persuasive. We got married in late November at a small city office, no guests, no party. Just the two of us, two random witnesses, and Allison, his mother. And now here I was, sitting in a children's playroom at a shopping mall with a 3-day-old baby in my arms, no home, no husband, no future. The clock read 9:30 p.m. Half an hour till closing. What was I going to do next? Where would I go? It was freezing outside, my back ached, and the baby couldn't just sleep anywhere. A hotel? $300 would get me 1, maybe 2 nights. Then what? My phone buzzed. I grabbed it. Maybe Greg? No. A text from my cell carrier. Your balance is $24. Please top up your account. I looked at sleeping Laura, her tiny face, her little fists curled up in sleep. 3 days old. She didn't know anything, didn't understand. She trusted me completely. She believed I would protect her, keep her safe, give her everything she needed. And I couldn't even give her a roof over her head. Something inside me broke. I covered my face with my hands and started to cry. Quietly, so I wouldn't wake my baby, so no one would stare. Tears slipped through my fingers, dripping onto my knees. I cried from helplessness, fear, despair. How could this happen? How could I be so blind, so naive? How did I not see that Greg wasn't who he said he was, that he'd just used me? I remembered 2 months ago, in February, when Greg asked me to sign over power of attorney. Marina, he said one evening while we were sitting in the kitchen, you should make me your proxy for the apartment, just in case. For what? I asked, surprised. Well, think about it, you're due in 6 weeks. What if something happens? What if you end up in the hospital and someone needs to sign papers, pay bills? I'm your husband, I should have that right. But why the apartment specifically? Marina, it's standard practice, a general power of attorney. Just a formality, for convenience. I'm not planning to do anything with it. It's only so I can handle things quickly if needed. I hesitated. Grandma Nina always said, never, ever give anyone power of attorney over your apartment. That's sacred. That's your home. But Greg was my husband, the father of my child. I had to trust him, right? I don't know, Greg. It feels weird. Weird? He frowned. So you don't trust me? I'm your husband, and you don't trust me? I do, but... No buts, he snapped. Either you trust me or you don't. And if you don't, why are we even married? Why are we having a baby? I got scared. He'd never raised his voice before. I didn't want to fight. The pregnancy had been rough. Doctors told me to stay calm. Okay, I said quietly. I'll do it. The next day we went to a notary. Greg had already arranged everything. The notary, a woman around 50 with glasses, quickly drafted the document. General power of attorney, full rights to sell, gift, exchange. I signed it without even reading properly. We paid $200. Greg was pleased, hugged me, kissed me. Thank you, sweetheart. You did the right thing. But I hadn't. I'd given away my home. My grandmother's home, the one she'd saved for all her life, the one she'd been granted back in '63, where she'd lived 40 years. The home where I was born and raised, filled with memories of my family. I'd given up everything, and he'd taken it all. The receptionist approached me. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we close in 10 minutes. You'll have to leave. I wiped my tears, nodded, bundled Laura tighter, tucked her into the sling, grabbed my bag, and left the playroom. The stores were closing, employees heading out, lights switching off. A security guard near the exit looked at me curiously but said nothing. Outside, it was cold, dark, and empty. I stood by the entrance of the mall, thinking, where to go now? Back to the building? Sit all night on that lobby bench? Or find a 24-hour cafe to wait till morning? My phone buzzed again. A message from Sarah. Marina, I'm so sorry. I can't right now. I've got my own problems. My husband's away. I'm alone with the kids. Our place is tiny. Try going to your mom's. To Mom. In Scranton. 3 hours by bus. Ticket, $60. Plus a taxi from the station to her place, another $30. That'd leave me with $210. How long would that last? A week? 2? But I had no choice. I headed for the bus terminal. It was about a 40-minute ride away. The last bus to Scranton left at 11:15 p.m. I could make it if I hurried. I took the subway to the terminal, paid $6 for the token, sat down, holding Laura close. She slept quietly against my chest. People sat all around, tired, indifferent, each lost in their own world. No one looked at me or cared. I was alone in the huge city I'd lived in all my life. I arrived at the terminal at 10 p. M. 10 people stood in line at the ticket counter. I waited at the end. Laura woke up and started crying. People turned around. Someone muttered, "What kind of mother drags a newborn through bus stations?" I lowered my head, rocking her gently. "Shoo, baby, it's okay. We'll be at Grandma's soon." Finally, my turn. The ticket clerk, a heavy-set woman with a sour expression, looked at me through the glass. "To Scranton. 1 ticket. For the 11:15? Sold out. A later one? 1A. M. Through Allentown. Arrives at 6. $82. 82. More expensive than usual, but there was no other option. I'll take it." I handed her the money and got my ticket. 218 left. Minus 30 for a taxi in Scranton, 188 remaining. Enough for diapers, food, medicine. I sat on a bench in the waiting hall. 3 hours till departure. Laura started crying again, hungry. I nursed her right there, covering us with my jacket. People sat all around, someone drinking beer, someone eating a hot dog, someone sleeping with their head on a bag. Just another night at the station. At 12:30, they announced boarding. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the bus. It was an old, worn-out Greyhound with dirty windows and hard seats. I sat in the back and settled Laura in my arms. The bus started moving. The lights of Philadelphia flickered past the windows, my city, the one I could no longer call home. I watched those lights and could think of only one thing. Tomorrow morning, when I get to Mom's, I'll call the police. I'll tell them everything. I'll fight for justice. I'll get my home back, because now I have a daughter, and I have to fight for her, for us. The bus rattled over every bump. I sat there holding Laura close, staring into the dark window where my pale face reflected back at me, thin, hollow, dark circles under my eyes. I'd lost maybe 10 pounds in 3 days at the hospital. The doctor said it was normal after a C-section, but now I didn't just look thin. I looked sick. Laura slept quietly in my arms, her little breath soft and even. The air inside the bus was stuffy, heavy with the smell of diesel. A man beside me snored loudly, reeking of alcohol. Across the aisle, a woman clutched a giant bag overflowing with groceries. Everyone was traveling somewhere, each with their own story. And no one knew that I was carrying my whole life on this bus, a 3-day-old baby, $300, and a broken heart. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Marisha, what's wrong? Why are you writing so late? You scared me. Are you okay?" I quickly typed a reply. "Mom, everything's fine. I just missed you. I'm coming to see you with Laura. We'll arrive around 6 a.m. Can you meet us?" A minute later, she answered, "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there. Is Greg with you?" "No, he's working. I'm coming alone." I put the phone away. I'd lied. But what could I tell her? That my husband betrayed me and threw me out of my home? No. I'd tell her later, when I saw her. I closed my eyes, and memories started to drift through my mind of the day I first met Greg. July 26th. I remember the exact date. It was my grandmother's death anniversary. I'd taken the day off, gone to the cemetery, cleaned her grave, placed fresh flowers. On my way home, I stopped at a cafe on Market Street. I was tired, needed a break, just wanted to sit and think. I took a seat by the window and ordered a cappuccino. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up. A man in his mid-30s stood in front of me. Tall, light shirt, pleasant face, perfect smile. "It's free," I said. He sat at the next table and ordered coffee. A few minutes later, he spoke again, asked me for directions to the train station. Then he asked if he could join me. I said yes. His name was Greg. He worked as a manager at a construction company. We talked for 2 hours, easily, effortlessly. He walked me home and asked for my number. After that, we met every day. Flowers, gifts, dinners. Greg said he'd been searching for me all his life, that I was the one. 3 weeks later, he suggested we move in together. I said it was too soon. He insisted. Why waste time if we already know we're meant to be? I agreed. He moved in with me in early September. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Greg was overjoyed. Said we had to get married, that he wanted our baby to be born into a proper family. I hesitated. We'd only known each other for 6 weeks. But he was so convincing. We got married on October 28th. No guests, no reception, just the two of us, 2 random witnesses, and Allison, Greg's mother. I met my mother-in-law for the first time at the wedding. She was a large woman in a mink coat, gold earrings glittering. She shook my hand and said, "Take care of him. He's my only one, my golden boy." After the wedding, things started to change. Greg began working late, coming home around 10. He stopped giving me money for groceries. He used to give $500 or $600 a week, then it dropped to $200 or $300. Said he had big expenses, that he was helping his mother, paying off debts. My salary, $3,200 a month, covered everything. Groceries, utilities, mom's medicine. By the end of each month, nothing was left. My savings, $20,000 I had built up over years, began to disappear. Then, in February, Greg asked me to sign over the power of attorney. Marina, you should make me your proxy for the apartment, just in case. You're pregnant, the baby's due in a month. What if something happens? I'm your husband, I should be able to handle things. I hesitated. Grandma had always said, never give anyone power of attorney over your home. It's sacred. But Greg was my husband, the father of my child. I don't know, Greg. It doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right? His voice hardened. So you don't trust me? Either you trust me or you don't. If not, why are we even married? I got scared. My belly cramped, the baby moved. The doctors had told me to stay calm. Okay, I whispered. I'll do it. The next day, we went to a notary. Greg had already arranged everything. The notary drafted the paper quickly, general power of attorney with rights to sell, gift, or exchange property. I signed it without reading. My hand was trembling. Greg slipped the document into his jacket pocket. There. Now I can relax, he said. There had been signs. So many signs. Allison had come 3 times. The second time was in December. She showed up unannounced, sent me out of the kitchen, and spoke to Greg alone. I overheard bits of it. We agreed, didn't we? 2 months. We'll get the papers ready. The third time was in March. She brought old baby clothes, walked around the apartment asking about documents, about the apartment's price. A week before my due date, she called Greg while he was in the shower. I picked up. Hello? Where's Greg? In the bathroom. Tell him the papers are ready. He should come by tomorrow. When I asked Greg what papers she meant, he said it was about work, that his mom had arranged a materials deal. I should have asked more. I should have found out the truth before it was too late. The bus pulled into Scranton at 6 in the morning. A gray, sleepy city. I was the last to get off. Took a taxi, 15 minutes to Mom's apartment building, an old 5-story on the outskirts. I climbed to the first floor and knocked on door number 3. Mom opened right away. Small, thin, gray-haired, in a faded robe. Her face tired, but her eyes alive. Marina, my baby girl. Come in, quick. She hugged me, and I broke. I started crying, quietly, soundlessly. What happened, honey? I couldn't speak. My throat clenched. Mom led me inside. The tiny one-room apartment, maybe 300 square feet. Old furniture, yellow wallpaper, stains on the ceiling, but warm, clean. Mom took Laura, laid her on the couch, covered her with a blanket, and put the kettle on. Now tell me, what happened? I sat at the table, staring at the old daisy-patterned plastic tablecloth. Mom, Greg tricked me. He sold my apartment while I was in the hospital. I came back yesterday. There's a new lock on the door, a note saying it's sold. The neighbors said Greg and his mother were moving things out. Mom froze. The kettle started whistling, but she didn't move. What are you saying? I've been kicked out of my own home. Greg used the power of attorney and sold it. Now I have nothing. Just $300 and the baby. Mom sank into a chair, covered her face with her hands. Oh God, how could this happen? I was stupid, Mom. I trusted him. I thought he loved me. Did you go to the police? Not yet. It all happened yesterday. Mom stood up and hugged me. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll fix this. You're strong. We'll get through it. The important thing is, you're alive, and the baby's alive. But I saw fear in her eyes. I was scared too. Yet sitting there in her tiny apartment, with my baby beside me, I suddenly understood. I had to act. I had to fight. I had a plan. First, the police, to file a fraud report. Then a lawyer, to find out how to contest the sale and get the apartment back. And then I remembered Anthony. Anthony Marcus, my old classmate. He was a journalist now at a Philadelphia TV station, hosting a crime show. We hadn't talked in years, but I still had his number. Journalists need stories. Big ones. A young mother with a newborn, betrayed by her husband, thrown out of her home. That's a story people would listen to. If Greg thought I'd give up, that I'd be too scared to fight, he was wrong. I'd fight with everything I had, because now I wasn't fighting just for me. I was fighting for my daughter. And I would win. I slept until noon. Mom woke me at 1, said it was time to feed Laura. I opened my eyes, disoriented for a few seconds. Then I remembered. Mom's apartment. Scranton. My escape from Philadelphia. Laura was lying next to me on the couch, sleeping, her tiny nose sniffling softly. I picked her up and nursed her. Mom set a plate of rice and a meat patty on the table. Eat, Marina. You need your strength. I ate. The rice was too salty, the patty tough, but I finished every bite. My first real meal in 2 days. Afterward, Mom sat across from me, her hands folded on the table. So what are we going to do? Go back to Philly. To the police. File a report. Are you sure they'll help you? You know how our police are. They might just brush it off, say it's a domestic matter. But it's fraud. He sold my apartment under false pretenses. Marina, it's not false. You signed the papers yourself. The notary witnessed it. It's legal. I froze. Mom was right. The power of attorney was real. I'd given Greg the right to sell my home. Technically, he hadn't broken the law. But I didn't know he'd sell it. He deceived me. It'll be hard to prove that, honey. Very hard. You'll need a good lawyer. And that costs money. A lot of money. I had $218 left. That was all. Not nearly enough for a lawyer. I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts, found Anthony Marcus's number. Checked the time, 2 p.m. A good time to call. I dialed. Long rings. Then a man's voice. Hello? Anthony? It's Marina. Marina Johnson. We went to college together. A pause. Then. Marina? Wilson? Wow, it's been years. 5, maybe 6. I got married, different last name now. Anthony, I need your help. It's urgent. What happened? I'll tell you in person. Are you in Philly? Yeah, at the newsroom. Can we meet tonight? Well, I guess so. What's going on? I have a story for your show. A big one. About real estate fraud, a young mother being scammed. Silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Interesting. Let's meet at 7, outside our newsroom on Market Street. You remember where it is? I remember. I'll be there. I hung up. Mom was looking at me. You really want to put this on TV? Yes. Marina, think about it. That's going public. Everyone will know. Your neighbors, friends, co-workers. Let them know. I have nothing to lose. They took my home, Mom. The only thing I had. I'm not keeping quiet. Mom sighed but didn't try to stop me. I looked at Laura, sleeping peacefully. Then at Mom, tired, frail, her hand still trembling from the stroke. She wouldn't be able to take care of the baby if I had to stay in Philadelphia long. But I had no choice. Mom, can you watch Laura tonight? I'll go to the city and be back late. Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful out there. Take care of yourself. I changed into clean clothes. Mom had washed my shirt and jeans that morning while I slept. I fed Laura one more time and put her down. Mom gave me $50 for the trip, saying it was all she had left until her pension came, but I needed it more. At 4 p.m., I took a bus to Philadelphia. The ride took 3.5 hours. I arrived at the terminal at 7:30 in the evening. It was a 15-minute walk to the newsroom. I walked down Market Street, feeling like a stranger in my own city. Crowds everywhere, people laughing, talking, rushing, cars honking, lights flashing from store windows. And there I was, walking to meet a journalist, to talk about my humiliation, my stupidity, how I'd been deceived. The newsroom was in an old building on Market Street, on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs and found the right door. The sign read, Channel 6 Philadelphia, Investigation Unit. I went inside. The small office had 3 desks with computers, posters of different programs on the walls. At one of the desks sat Anthony, a tall, lean man around 35, wearing jeans and a sweater. Dark hair combed back, glasses in a thin frame. When he saw me, he stood and smiled. Marina. Long time no see. We hugged. He pulled back and looked me over carefully. You've changed. Lost weight. I gave birth 3 days ago. C-section. Congratulations. Boy or girl? Girl. Laura. Beautiful name. So, tell me, what happened? We sat at a table. Anthony took out a recorder and placed it between us. Mind if I record? For work. Go ahead. He turned it on, and I began to talk. From the very beginning. How I met Greg, how quickly things moved, how I got pregnant, how we got married, how he asked for the power of attorney, how I came home from the hospital and couldn't get into my apartment, how the neighbors turned away, How I spent the night in a mall with my newborn daughter. Anthony listened silently, occasionally nodding, jotting notes in his notebook. When I finished, he leaned back, took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. That's a tough story. But for TV, it's gold. People need to hear this. They need to know these schemes exist. You'll do a report? I will. But I need evidence, documents, photos, recordings if you have any. I took out my phone and opened the gallery. There were photos, our wedding, my last ultrasound, my hospital discharge papers. And what else? I remembered, I'd taken pictures of the apartment documents when I was preparing papers for work. They were in cloud storage. Here. I showed him the property certificate. This is my apartment. It's in my name. And here's our marriage certificate. And here's Greg. Anthony looked at the screen, nodding. Good. What about the power of attorney? Any copy? No. Greg took it with him. All right. And the note on the door? Did you take a picture? I froze. No, I hadn't. I'd been in shock. It hadn't even crossed my mind. No. Too bad. But that's okay. We'll go to your building tomorrow morning and film it. If the note's still there, perfect. If not, we'll shoot the door and talk to neighbors. Someone's bound to talk. The neighbors are scared. No one wants to say anything. Camera changes things. People like being on TV. Someone will talk. Anthony started writing something down. Okay, tomorrow at 9 a.m. we meet outside your building. I'll bring a cameraman. We'll film everything, the entrance, your door, the neighbors. Then we'll go to the county recorder's office to check who bought the apartment and when. After that, we'll head to the police, you'll file a report, and we'll film that too. By evening, we'll edit it, and it'll air at 9 p.m. on Philadelphia Stories. I stared at him, stunned. That fast? It'll air tomorrow? Anthony, is this even legal? Filming without Greg's permission? Marina, you're the victim. You have every right to tell your story. As for Greg, he'll find out soon enough. It's an investigation. Everything's by the book. What if he sues me for defamation? Defamation means spreading lies. You're telling the truth. You have documents, property deed, marriage certificate. If he dared to sell your place, he can explain himself. We'll give him a chance to comment if he wants. I nodded, trembling from fear, from nerves, from a flicker of hope. All right, I'll do it. Great. One more thing, are you willing to appear on camera? Show your face? I hesitated. Showing my face meant everyone would know, former coworkers, friends, Greg's relatives. They'd gossip, pity me, judge me. But maybe that was good. Maybe others who'd been hurt by Greg or his mother would come forward too. Maybe I wasn't the only one. No, I said. I don't want my face shown. I have a baby. I don't want her bullied later at school or in the neighborhood. Can you blur my face or change my voice? Sure. We'll film from behind or from the side. We can alter your voice. But you'll tell the story in full detail, no omissions. I will. We set the meeting for 9 a.m. Anthony walked me to the door and shook my hand. Marina, hang in there. It's going to be all right. We'll bring this story to light. Your husband and his mother will answer for what they've done. I stepped outside. It was dark, cold, drizzling. I stood under the awning, thinking, what if this is a mistake? What if going public only makes things worse? What if Greg gets angry and does something even worse? But what could be worse? He'd already taken my home. There was nothing left to take. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 9 p.m. The last bus to Scranton left at 11. I still had time. But first, I had something else to do. I walked down Market Street toward my building. It took about 30 minutes. I stopped across the street, looking up at the windows on the 5th floor, my apartment. The lights were on. Someone was inside. The new owners? Or Greg, packing up the last of my things. I entered the building and climbed to the 5th floor. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The door to my apartment was closed. The note was gone. The new lock gleamed under the hallway light. I stood there, placed my palm against the cold wood. This was my home, where I was born, where I grew up, where my grandmother lived. Every scratch on the wall, every stain on the ceiling, familiar, loved. And now it was all someone else's. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the door with its new lock. Then I went down to the 4th floor and knocked on Oscar and Vera's door. No one answered. I knocked again. Vera. Oscar. It's Marina. Please, open the door. Silence. I went back up to the 5th floor and knocked on Aunt Helen's door. Nothing. Then Juliet and Stephen. No answer. I stood on the landing, realizing they were all afraid. Afraid of Greg. Afraid of his mother. Afraid of trouble. It was easier to pretend nothing happened. Easier to look away. I went down to the first floor, to Linda's booth. She was watching a TV show on her phone. Linda, hi. She flinched, turned around. When she saw me, her face hardened. You again? What do you want now? Can you tell me who's living in my apartment now? How should I know? You think I'm the housing office? But you saw who went in. No one's been in. Yesterday your husband came with some guys, took a few more things out. But today, no one. And the new owners? You didn't see them? I pulled a $10 bill from my pocket, the last of what Mom had given me. Linda, please. You see everything, you know everything. Just tell me who bought the apartment. Maybe there's some document, a phone number, anything. She looked at the bill, then at me, took it and shoved it into her robe pocket. All right. Yesterday when your husband came with those guys, one of them left a bag in the hallway. I picked it up, was gonna throw it away. There were some papers inside. I didn't look, not my business. But if you want it, it's over there, on the shelf. She pointed to a metal shelf in the corner of the booth. I walked over and picked up the bag, an ordinary plastic shopping bag. Inside were a few papers. Thank you. I left the building, sat down on a bench under a streetlight, and emptied the bag onto my lap. A few sheets of paper fell out, drafts of some contracts, printouts, notes. I started reading. A purchase agreement for the apartment at my address. Seller, Gregory Johnson, acting under power of attorney for Marina Johnson. Buyer, Michael Patterson. Date of sale, April 23rd. The day before yesterday, when I was still in the hospital. Price, $480,000. I stared at those numbers in disbelief. Almost $500,000. My apartment had been sold for nearly $500,000, and the money was gone, taken by Greg and his mother. Next, I found a small handwritten note inside the bag. Phone numbers, names. One name jumped out, Allison, followed by a 215 area code. My mother-in-law's number. I quickly saved it to my phone. Then another note, written in Greg's handwriting on a small scrap of paper. Michael, $30K up front. Recorder's office papers by Friday. Clear apartment by Saturday. So this Michael Patterson was a front. Greg had paid him $30,000 to register the purchase in his name. The real money had gone to Greg and Allison. I carefully placed all the papers back into the bag, making sure not to crumple them. These were evidence, important evidence. Tomorrow I'd give them to Anthony. He'd film everything and show it on TV. People would know the truth. I stood up, walked toward the subway. I had to catch the last bus back to Scranton. Tomorrow morning I'd return, meet Anthony, and we'd start filming. The subway car was half empty. I sat by the window, watching my reflection in the dark glass. A tired face, dull eyes, messy hair. I looked 40, though I was only 28. But inside me, something new had appeared. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. Cold, steady resolve to see this through. I would come back. I would get my home back, no matter what it took. In the morning, I boarded the bus to Philadelphia again. Laura stayed with Mom. I'd fed her before leaving and left 3 bottles of pumped milk. Mom promised she'd manage. On the bus, I reread the papers I'd found the night before, the sale agreement, the phone numbers, Greg's notes. All of it was proof of fraud. I photographed every single page on my phone, just in case. I arrived in Philadelphia at 8 a.m. I still had an hour before meeting Anthony. I stopped by a cafe, had a coffee and a muffin. I had to stay strong, keep it together. At exactly 9, I reached my building. Anthony was already waiting outside, along with a young cameraman, about 25, with a large camera on his shoulder. Marina, hey. Anthony shook my hand. This is Dennis, our cameraman. Ready to start? We went up to the 5th floor. Dennis filmed my door with its new lock. I stood beside it, my back to the camera, and spoke. I've lived here since I was born. This was my grandmother's apartment. On April 25th, I came back from the hospital with my 3-day-old baby and couldn't get inside. The lock had been changed. There was a note saying the apartment had been sold. Then we went down to the 4th floor and rang Oscar and Vera's doorbell. No answer. Tried Aunt Helen. Nothing. Tried the young couple. Still silence. The neighbors are afraid to talk, I said into the camera. They all saw what happened, but no one wants to get involved. Only the concierge, Linda, agreed to give an interview, though she asked for $20 first. Anthony handed her the cash. She sat in her little booth and looked into the camera. Yes, I saw it. On April 24th, Marina's husband came with a few men. They carried out boxes and bags. Then some workers came and changed the lock. On the 25th, Marina came back with the baby, and her key didn't work. I told her to go to her family. It wasn't my business. Anthony nodded, thanked her. We stepped outside. All right, he said. Next stop, the county recorder's office. Let's find out the details of the sale. We drove there in Anthony's car. The line was long, about 30 people. We waited an hour. Finally, it was my turn. I gave the clerk my address and asked for a record of ownership. The clerk, a woman in her 40s wearing a gray suit, typed something into her computer. Owner, Patterson, Michael. Title registered April 23rd of this year. And the seller? Johnson, Gregory, acting under general power of attorney from owner Johnson, Marina. I'm Johnson, Marina, I said. And I never gave consent to sell. I was deceived. The clerk looked at me with sympathy. You'll need to go to the police and consult an attorney. If you can prove you were misled when granting the power of attorney, the sale can be challenged in court. How long will that take? 6 months, a year, maybe more. Depends on the case. I nodded. Anthony filmed everything, the clerk, the computer screen, me standing there. When we left the office, he checked his watch. It's 11. Let's go to the police so you can file a report. Then I'll take you to a lawyer I know. She's a real estate specialist, great reputation. She'll give you a free consultation, explain your options. We drove to the police station on Vine Street. I wrote a report about the fraud, told them the whole story, and attached copies of the documents I'd found in the bag. The officer on duty, a tired-looking man in his 50s, took my statement. We'll review your claim within 3 days and decide whether to open a case. If we need more details, we'll call you in for questioning. What should I do meanwhile? Wait, and get legal counsel, challenge the sale in civil court. Dennis filmed everything. I signed for a copy of the report, and we left. Now for the lawyer, Anthony said. We went downtown to an office on Walnut Street. The attorney, Patricia, about 45, professional and composed, listened carefully to my story and examined the papers. The situation is difficult, she said, but not hopeless. You did sign the power of attorney voluntarily, that's a fact. But if we can prove your husband misled you about its purpose, the sale can be declared invalid. We'll need proof, recorded conversations, witnesses, written communication. I have a recording, I said, showing her my phone. Here, by accident, I recorded a conversation between Greg and his mother 2 months ago. They were talking about documents and deadlines. Patricia listened to the audio, nodded. Good. That helps. We also need to find the buyer, Patterson. Most likely a fake name. If we can get him to admit he was paid to front the deal, your case gets much stronger. How much would the case cost? If I take it on, $5,000 for my fee, plus filing and expert fees. Around $7,000 total. I had $150 left. $7,000 might as well have been $1 million. Patricia saw my face inside. I understand. No money. You could try legal aid, but the waiting list is months long. Or wait until the police open a case, then you can act through the investigation. We left the office. Anthony put a hand on my shoulder. Don't get discouraged. Right now, the most important thing is to make this public. The report airs tonight. People will see it, hear it. Maybe other victims will come forward. Maybe someone will help pay for a lawyer. But first, let's film the final interview. We drove to the Delaware River waterfront. It was quiet there, peaceful. I sat on a bench by the water. Dennis filmed me from behind so my face wouldn't show. Anthony asked questions, and I answered. I talked about Greg, the power of attorney, the hospital, the night in the mall with Laura, how terrifying it was to be left alone with a newborn, no home, no money. I want other women to know, I said, to never repeat my mistakes. Don't give anyone power of attorney for your apartment, not even your husband. Don't believe in pretty words about love after just 2 months. Be careful who you trust, I said into the camera, because there are a lot of people like Greg and his mother. They look for victims, deceive them, and take everything they have. When the filming was done, it was already 3 in the afternoon. Anthony said, That's enough material. I'll head to the newsroom now and start editing. It'll be on the air tonight. Turn on Channel 6 at 9 p.m. or watch it online on our website. He drove me to the bus terminal. I took the bus back to Scranton. The whole way, I stared out the window, thinking, what happens next? The report would air tonight. Greg would see it. What would he do? Get scared? Try to contact me? Or just vanish with the money? I got home around 7 in the evening. Laura was asleep, and Mom was sitting beside her, gently stroking her hair. "Well, honey?" she asked. "They filmed everything. It's airing tonight at 9. On TV? Yeah." Mom sighed. So it started. I fed Laura and changed into my home clothes. At 8:50, Mom and I sat down in front of the old television. I turned on Channel 6 Philadelphia Stories. At exactly 9, the intro rolled. Then the host appeared on screen, a young man in a suit. "Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that will shock you." A young mother, returning home from the hospital with her newborn baby, couldn't get into her own apartment. Her husband, using power of attorney, sold the property and disappeared with the money. Details in a report by Anthony Marcus. The screen showed my building, the entrance, the staircase, the door with the new lock. Then me, filmed from behind, my voice altered. On April 25th, I came home from the hospital with my 3-day-old daughter. My key didn't fit the lock. There was a note on the door saying the apartment had been sold. Next came footage from the county recorder's office, the police station, interviews with the concierge and the lawyer. Then my final interview in the park, me talking about how I trusted Greg, how I signed the power of attorney, and how I ended up homeless. At the end, a photo of Greg appeared, the one from our wedding that I'd given Anthony. Then a photo of Allison, which I'd found on my phone, one Greg had shown me long ago. Gregory Johnson and his mother, Allison Johnson, are suspected of fraud, Anthony's voice said off-screen. According to our investigation, this may not be their first case. Police are now checking reports from other possible victims. The segment ended. The host looked straight into the camera. "If you have any information about Gregory or Allison Johnson, or if you've been a victim of a similar scheme, please call our newsroom." A phone number flashed on the screen. I sat frozen. It was done. Everyone knew now. All of Philadelphia had seen my story. They'd seen Greg's and Allison's faces. I wondered if he was watching right now, if he already knew he'd been exposed. What was he feeling? My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Marina, is that you? What the hell did you do?" Greg. He'd found my number, must have still had it saved. I replied. I told the truth. And this is only the beginning. A minute later, another message popped up. "You'll regret this. I'll find you. You'll pay for it." Threats. He was threatening me. I took screenshots and sent them to Anthony. He replied almost instantly. "Save everything. It's evidence. And if he keeps threatening you, report it to the police." Another message from Greg. "You really think anyone will believe you? You signed the power of attorney yourself. You signed everything. This is your fault." I blocked his number. I didn't want to see another word from him. Mom looked at me anxiously. "Marisha, what if he really comes here? What if he finds you?" "He won't. He doesn't know where I am. And besides, he's the one hiding now." His face was on TV. "The police are after him." The phone buzzed again. It was Anthony calling. "Marina, did you see the report?" "I did. Thank you. Listen, after it aired, we got a flood of calls. 3 women already reached out. They say they were scammed by the Johnsons too. One lost her apartment, another was tricked out of money in some fake investment deal, and the third was just robbed outright. It's a whole operation." I was silent. So I wasn't alone. There were others. Other victims. "Come to the newsroom tomorrow morning," Anthony continued. "We're doing a follow-up piece. We'll bring all the victims together and record their statements. This could turn into a major case." "Okay, I'll be there." I hung up. Looked at Mom, at sleeping little Laura. I was exhausted, completely drained. I hadn't really slept in 2 days, just ran around giving interviews, gathering evidence. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I had to keep going. To the very end. Tomorrow would be a new day. And a new battle. The next morning, I took the bus back to Philadelphia. Mom stayed with Laura, promising she could handle it, that the most important thing now was getting the apartment back. I kissed my baby, hugged Mom, and left. At the newsroom, they were already waiting, Anthony, Dennis with his camera, and 3 women. The same ones who had called after last night's broadcast. The first was Rebecca, about 45, thin, wearing glasses. The second, Jennifer, maybe 30, short hair. The third, Dorothy, an older woman around 60 with a weary face. Anthony introduced us to each other, and we all sat around a big conference table. "Let's take turns," he said. "Start with Rebecca." Rebecca adjusted her glasses and began speaking softly. "I met Gregory Johnson a year ago. He told me he was an engineer, recently divorced. We dated for 3 months. He was attentive, kind. Then he suggested I invest in a construction project, said I'd get 30% annual profit. I gave him $150,000, all my savings. He gave me a receipt, promised I'd get it back in 6 months. A year's passed. No money, and Greg's disappeared. His phone's disconnected. Jennifer went next. My story's similar. Met him 6 months ago. He also talked about investments. I gave him $80,000. Then he vanished. Dorothy spoke last. My apartment was stolen. Just like yours, Marina. I met his mother, Allison, at a clinic. She was so kind, so friendly. Offered to help me with my paperwork for benefits. I'm a pensioner, disabled. She asked me to sign a power of attorney, said it would make the process faster. I trusted her. A month later, I found out the apartment had been sold. That was 2 years ago. I went to court but lost. The power of attorney was valid. I listened to their stories and realized it was a system, a refined, practiced con. Mother and son working together. They found lonely women, trusting, vulnerable, with money or property. Gained their trust, deceived them, and took everything. How many more were there? 10? 20? How many lives had they destroyed? Anthony turned on his recorder and started asking questions. Dennis filmed everything. We spoke for 2 hours, telling every detail, showing documents, receipts, contracts, powers of attorney. When it was over, Anthony said, I'm taking all this to the police. With evidence like this, they'll have to open a case. This isn't one isolated fraud, it's a whole string of crimes. We exchanged phone numbers, Rebecca, Jennifer, Dorothy, and I, and agreed to stay in touch, to support one another. Anthony drove me to the police station. We met the same officer from yesterday. Anthony laid a folder of documents on his desk. Yesterday, Marina Johnson filed a fraud report. Today, we have 3 more victims with similar cases. Here are their statements and documents. The total losses exceed $700,000. The officer flipped through the pages, frowning. That's serious. I'll pass this to the investigator. I expect a case will be opened within a few days. And will you issue a warrant? Anthony asked. If the case is opened, yes. We'll put Gregory and Allison Johnson on the wanted list. We left the station. Anthony looked at me. Well, it's moving forward. The next step is finding them. Any idea where they might be? I don't know. Greg once mentioned his mom had an apartment somewhere in South Philly, but I never got the address. Do you have her phone number? Yes. I found it yesterday among the papers. Let's try calling her. I'll record the call. Anthony pulled out his phone, turned on the recording feature. I dialed Allison's number. Long rings, then she picked up, her voice sharp and irritated. Yes? Who's this? Allison? It's Marina. Silence. Then a harsh reply. What do you want? Where's Greg? How should I know? I'm not his babysitter. You and Greg robbed me. You sold my apartment. You thought I'd stay quiet? You signed everything yourself, she snapped. You gave him power of attorney. No one forced you. Greg lied to me. He said it was for routine paperwork. You both used it to steal my home. We didn't steal anything. Everything was legal. If you're stupid and gullible, that's your problem. There was a TV report yesterday. You and Greg were shown. The police are looking for you. 3 more women have filed complaints. You'll pay for what you've done. Allison paused. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, colder. You'll regret getting involved with us. We'll find a way to get to you. We have connections, money. And you? You're a broke single mom with a baby. Who's gonna help you? She hung up. Anthony stopped the recording. Perfect, he said. That's an admission of guilt and a direct threat. Another piece of evidence. I'll send it to the investigator right now. We got into the car. Anthony started the engine. Listen, he said, let's try finding this Patterson guy, the one listed as the buyer of your apartment. Is his address in the documents? I pulled the papers from the bag and started looking. Yes. Porter Street, Building 8, Apartment 23. Let's go. We got there in about half an hour. It was an old 9-story building on the outskirts of town, peeling walls, broken windows in the stairwells. We went up to the 3rd floor and found apartment 23. Anthony rang the bell. A man in his 40s opened the door, unshaven, wearing sweatpants and a faded tank top. The smell of alcohol hit us immediately. Who are you? Michael Patterson? Anthony asked. Yeah, what do you want? We're from Channel 6 Philadelphia. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the purchase of an apartment on Market Street. Patterson went pale. I don't know anything. Leave me alone. He tried to slam the door, but Anthony blocked it with his foot. Michael, we know you bought an apartment for $480,000. Where did you get that kind of money? You work as a warehouse loader making $2,000 a month. It was a gift. From relatives. What relatives? You don't have any, except your retired mother. Patterson hesitated, looking down. All right, how much? How much do you want me to pay to keep quiet? We don't want money. We want the truth. Who paid you to put the apartment in your name? Patterson was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. Johnson. Gregory Johnson. He offered me $30,000 to act as the buyer. Said it was a great deal, something about avoiding taxes. I agreed. I needed the money. And where is Johnson now? I don't know. He called me 2 days ago, said things were getting hot and told me to keep my mouth shut. And the apartment? It's registered in your name? Yeah. But he said we'd transfer it to the real buyer in a month and I'd get another payment. Anthony nodded. Michael, you'd better go to the police and tell them everything. Otherwise, they'll charge you as an accomplice to fraud. That's up to 6 years in prison. Patterson's face went white. I'm not a criminal. I just needed the money. Then do the right thing. Go to the police voluntarily. Give a statement, and you'll probably get probation. But if you stay silent, you'll do real time. We gave Patterson the investigator's contact information and left the building. He'll go, Anthony said. He's scared. Guys like him aren't real criminals, just greedy and stupid. He'll cooperate. They'll give him a suspended sentence. The apartment will be seized by the state, and then you'll get it back through court. I nodded. That meant there was a chance. Maybe not right away, maybe after months of hearings, but still, a chance. Anthony drove me to the bus station. As we said goodbye, he told me, Marina, hang in there. The hardest part is over. The case will be opened, they'll find the Johnsons, prosecute them, and you'll get your apartment back. It's just a matter of time. How much time? Half a year, maybe a year. But you'll make it. I boarded the bus to Scranton. The whole way, I stared out the window, wondering what came next. 6 months of court battles, investigations. Where would I live? With Mom, in her tiny apartment. How would I provide for Laura? My maternity benefit was $1,000 a month, barely enough for diapers, formula, clothes, and medicine. Mom's pension was $1,100. Together, it still wouldn't cover us. I needed a job. But what kind, with a baby in my arms? My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Marina, this is Rebecca. We talked with Jennifer and Dorothy. We want to pool some money together to help you hire a lawyer. Each of us has a little saved. Together we can raise about $3,000. It's not much, but it's something. I read the message, and my eyes filled with tears. Women I barely knew, women I'd met for the first time that day, were offering to help. To give up their own last savings so I could hire an attorney. I replied, thank you so much. But please don't. You don't have much yourselves. You're victims too. Rebecca wrote back, we're in this together. We'll support each other. That's the only way to win. I wiped my tears. Together. We were together. For women who'd been deceived, robbed, abandoned, but not broken. I arrived in Scranton at 10 p.m. Mom opened the door. Laura was asleep in the bedroom. Well, sweetheart, there's progress. 3 more victims came forward. They found the fake buyer. He confessed everything. The case will be opened in the next few days. And Greg? Not yet. But they'll find him. He can't run far. I fed Laura and lay down to rest, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning. Where was Greg now? What was he thinking, knowing the police were after him? Was he scared? Or convinced he could get away? And another thought wouldn't let me go. What if they'd already fled? What if they'd caught a bus, left the city, maybe even the country? $500,000 could buy a new life anywhere. No, they couldn't have left. It had all happened too fast. The report aired just last night. Only 24 hours had passed. They were still here, in Philadelphia, hiding somewhere. I grabbed my phone, opened the browser, and typed, how to track a person by phone number. A list of websites came up. I clicked the first one, a paid tracking service. $50. I had 100 left. I entered my card info, paid, and typed in Allison's phone number. A minute later, I got a response. Number registered in Philadelphia. Last activity, today, 3:23 p.m. Cell Tower, South Philadelphia, Federal Street area. So she was in South Philly. She hadn't fled. She was there, in her apartment, most likely. I forwarded the information to Anthony. He replied instantly. Perfect. I'll pass this to the police first thing in the morning. They'll check every address linked to her in that area. I put down the phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would be a new day. Maybe the last day of their freedom. Maybe tomorrow they'd be caught. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Anthony. Marina, turn on the TV. Right now. I jumped up from the couch and switched on the television. The morning news was on. The anchor was saying, "This morning in South Philadelphia, 2 suspects were arrested in connection with a series of real estate frauds. Allison Johnson, age 62, and her son Gregory Johnson, 36, are accused of embezzling over $700,000 in property assets." The screen showed footage of the arrest. The entrance of an old 9-story building, police cars, officers escorting Allison out. She was shouting, resisting, her face red, hair disheveled, handcuffed. Then came Greg. He was silent, head down, also in handcuffs. The suspects have been charged with large-scale fraud and face up to 10 years in prison. I stared at the screen, hardly believing it. They'd been caught, arrested, in just 3 days. The phone rang again. It was Anthony. "You saw it? They got them. The detective said your info and our report made it happen. The cops went to her apartment this morning. Both were there." What happens now? Now comes the investigation, interrogations, expert reviews, gathering evidence. Then the trial, maybe in 3 or 4 months. And the apartment? That'll be handled separately. Patterson already confessed, admitted he was a front buyer. The sale will be voided through court. It'll take time, but you'll get your apartment back. I hung up, sat down on the couch, covered my face with my hands. It was over. They were caught. They'd finally pay for everything. Mom came over and hugged me. "Well, honey," she said softly, "justice has been served." I burst into tears, out of relief, exhaustion, 3 straight days of tension. Finally, I could breathe again. Later that afternoon, the police called. A woman's official voice on the line. "Marina Johnson, you need to come in for questioning tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Vine Street precinct." "All right, I'll be there." The next day, I went back to Philadelphia. At the station, they led me into an investigator's office, a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a cabinet full of files. The investigator, a woman around 50 with short hair and a tailored suit, introduced herself. "Detective Sarah Williams. Please, have a seat." I sat down. She placed a report form in front of me. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. From the moment you met the Johnsons." I spoke for 2 hours. She took notes, asked clarifying questions. When she was done, she handed me the statement to read and sign. I signed it. "One more question," she said. "Do you wish to file for emotional damages?" "Yes." "What amount do you consider fair?" I paused. What number could possibly reflect all that pain, fear, and those nights wandering the city with a newborn? $50,000, I said finally. She nodded. "All right, we'll file the claim." I walked out of the office. Rebecca was sitting in the hallway, waiting for her turn to be questioned. "Marina." She stood up and hugged me. "Did you hear? They were arrested." "I did. I saw it on TV. Jennifer and Dorothy were called in today too. We're all giving our statements. They'll be locked up for a long time." We exchanged phone numbers again and agreed to stay in touch after the trials. I stepped outside. The sun was shining, the air was warm. May 1st, spring in full bloom. People were walking, smiling. Life was moving on. I walked toward my old building. I wanted to see it again, to stand in front of it one more time. When I reached it, I stopped across the street, looking up at the 5th-floor windows. Soon, I'd be back there. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, but I'd be back. "Marina?" I turned. It was Oscar, holding a grocery bag. "Uncle Oscar." "I saw the news," he said, lowering his eyes. "About your husband. About what he did. I'm sorry I didn't help you then. I was scared, you know? Thought it was a family matter, none of my business." "I understand. If you need anything, let me know. I'll help however I can." He shook my hand and went inside. I stood there a few more minutes, then headed to the subway. I needed to get back to Scranton, to Mom, to Laura. On the bus, I thought about what came next. Courts, hearings, waiting. Where would I live all that time? I couldn't stay with Mom forever. She was sick, her apartment too small. My phone buzzed. A message from Rebecca. "Marina, I was thinking. I have a 1-bedroom apartment in Upper Darby. I rent it out, but it's empty now. The tenants moved out. You can live there until you get your place back. Free of charge. It's just sitting there. I read the message 3 times. Free housing. In Upper Darby. It was a suburb of Philadelphia, far, but still a roof over our heads. I replied, Rebecca, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. She wrote back, come tomorrow. I'll give you the keys. An apartment, a home, something I didn't have just 3 days ago. And now I did. That evening I got back to Scranton and told Mom about the questioning and Rebecca's offer. Go, sweetheart, Mom said. Lie there. Take care of Laura. I'll come visit when I'm strong enough. The next day, I met Rebecca in Philadelphia. She handed me the keys and showed me the address in Upper Darby. It's got everything you need, bed, table, fridge. I'll cover the utilities. Don't worry. Stay as long as you need. I hugged her, speechless. That evening, Mom, Laura, and I moved into the apartment. It was on the first floor of an old 5-story building. Small, a single room, kitchen, and bathroom. The furniture was old, the wallpaper faded, but it was clean, warm, and cozy. Mom helped me settle in. We made the bed, unpacked Laura's tiny clothes bought with the last of my money, fed her, and put her to sleep. There, Mom said softly, now you have a home. Maybe temporary, but it's yours. She went back to Scranton the next day. I stayed alone with Laura, for the first time in a week. Alone. Calm. No fear, no running. I sat on the couch, holding my baby. Looked at her tiny face. She was asleep, breathing softly through her little nose. We did it, I whispered. We made it, my girl. 2 weeks passed. I got used to our new place, our new life. I took Laura for walks in the park, visited the clinic for checkups, bought groceries at the market. Just an ordinary life of a mother with an infant. Anthony called regularly with updates. The investigation was moving forward. Greg and Allison were in jail, still denying guilt, but the evidence was strong, for victims' testimonies, Patterson's confession, recordings, documents. In mid-May, Detective Williams called me. Marina Johnson, the trial is scheduled for June 8th. You'll need to appear as a witness. I'll be there. On June 8th, I arrived at the courthouse on Vine Street. In the hallway, Rebecca, Jennifer, and Dorothy were already waiting. We hugged and encouraged each other. Then the defendants were brought in. Greg and Allison, dressed in plain clothes but looking pale and drained. Greg wouldn't look up. Allison stared straight ahead, defiant. The judge, a woman around 60 in a black robe, announced, the court is now in session in the case of Gregory Johnson and Allison Johnson, charged with large-scale fraud. The trial lasted 3 hours. The charges were read, witnesses questioned, evidence shown. We testified one by one, Rebecca, Jennifer, Dorothy, and I. We told our stories, how they deceived us, how we lost our homes and savings. Greg said nothing. Allison kept shouting, it's all lies. They're the ones to blame. They signed the papers themselves, we didn't break any laws. The judge ordered her to be quiet. At the end, the judge left to deliberate. We waited for an hour. Then she returned and read the verdict. Gregory Johnson is found guilty of fraud under federal law. Sentenced to 7 years in prison. 7 years. Greg got 7 years. Allison Johnson is found guilty and sentenced to 8 years in prison. 8 years, for his mother. The defendants are jointly ordered to pay compensation for emotional damages to the victims. The judge read the amounts, $50,000 for me, $30,000 for Rebecca, $20,000 for Jennifer, $40,000 for Dorothy. Allison screamed, this is unfair. We're innocent. The guards escorted them out. I watched them go. Greg turned back and looked at me. His eyes were full of pain, fear, and remorse. But it was too late. Far too late. We stepped out of the courthouse and stood on the steps, hugging. It's over, Rebecca said quietly. No, I replied. I still have to get my apartment back. The case with Patterson isn't finished. You will. You definitely will. I nodded. I believed her. For the first time, I truly believed. The civil case to reclaim my apartment dragged on for 4 months. I attended every hearing with Laura in a sling. The lawyer, Patricia, the same one Anthony had introduced me to, agreed to take my case for a symbolic fee of $1,000. She said cases like mine deserved attention. Patterson didn't fight. He testified, admitted he'd been a front buyer. The sale was declared void, and the apartment was returned to me. On October 20th, I received a new ownership certificate. I held it in my hands, hardly believing it. I'd done it. I'd gotten my home back. The next day, I went to see the apartment. Patterson had already moved out. He'd been given probation and ordered to vacate. I opened the door with my old key. The lock had been changed back. I stepped inside. Empty. Completely empty. All the furniture gone. Marks on the walls where pictures had hung, scratches on the floor where the cabinets had stood. Just bare walls and dust. I walked through the rooms. Here had stood my grandmother's bed. There, the wardrobe with her clothes. The table where we used to have dinner. All gone. But the apartment was mine again. My home. I took out my phone and called Mom. Mom, I'm home. Sweetheart, her voice trembled. You're back? I'm back. I sat down on the floor in the empty room, leaning against the wall. Laura was asleep in the sling beside me. She was 6 months old now, stronger, bigger. She'd learned to smile, to babble, to hold her head up. Outside, it was raining. October, cold, gray sky. But inside, it was warm. The radiators were on, even if the room was bare. I looked up at the ceiling. The same crack was still there, the old water stain unchanged. The wallpaper still faded yellow, just like before. Only the furniture was missing. That's okay. I'd buy new pieces, bit by bit, with the compensation money. I'd received my $50,000 in September. Enough for a bed, a table, a fridge. Not all at once, but eventually I'd make it feel like home again. My phone buzzed. A message from Rebecca. Marina, congratulations. Anthony told me you got your apartment back. You did it. It's finally over. I replied. Thank you for everything, for the Upper Darby apartment, for your support. I couldn't have done it without you. Rebecca wrote back. We did it together. All 4 of us. Yes, we did. I stood up and walked to the window. Down in the courtyard, children were playing. Life was moving on. People worked, studied, raised their kids, just ordinary life. Mine would become ordinary too. Slowly. I'd find a job I could do from home, so I could stay with Laura. I'd furnish the apartment, raise my daughter. In a year, I'd take her to daycare and go back to an office job. I'd live. Greg was in prison. 7 years. He'd be 43 when he got out, still young. Maybe he'd start over. Or maybe he'd go back to scamming people. Who knows? Allison was in prison too. 8 years. She'd be over 70 when she got out. An old woman. Would she even live that long? I didn't feel sorry for them. Not one bit. They stole my home, deceived me, left me on the street with a newborn. Let them pay for it. I picked Laura up. She'd just woken up and was looking at me with her big eyes. She smiled. We're home, sweetheart, I whispered. Finally home. I sat on the windowsill and nursed her. Outside, a light rain was falling, but I felt warm. I remembered that day 6 months ago, April 25th, when I came back from the hospital and couldn't get into my apartment. Standing there with my newborn in my arms, not knowing what to do. Half a year had passed. Just 6 months, but it felt like a lifetime. I'd lost so much. My husband, though he was never really a husband. My belongings, furniture, clothes, everything I'd built over the years. My peace of mind. Now I feared trusting people, feared betrayal. But I'd gained much more. Strength. I'd learned that I could fight, that I could survive. Friends, Rebecca, Jennifer, Dorothy, Anthony. People who stood by me, who helped, who didn't turn away. And most importantly, I kept my home. My grandmother's home. The home I grew up in. The home where my daughter would now grow up. Laura finished eating and fell asleep again. I held her in my arms and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sun broke through the clouds, weak and autumnal, but still, the sun. I smiled. Everything would be all right. We would be all right. We were all right. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to keep bringing you new, powerful stories every day. You can already find our next story on the main page. We wish you all the best and happiness in your life.